Is this a dirty hit? Jaden Daniels took a nasty hit by Alabama linebacker Dallas Turner, and now he's in concussion protocol. Turner has a history of roughing up court.
Dallas Turner is a dirty football. This isn't an isolated instance with Jaden Daniels last year against Texas. He did the same thing to Quinn Ewers. It was Dallas Turner who put the late hit on Quinn Ewers that knocked him out of the game and cost him the bulk of that season. After that game against Texas, they played Ole Miss, and one was the most violent and egregious face mask I've ever seen, where Jackson Dart's helmet was completely turned around. Dart was depleted by his helmet.
Bama Bias. Does it exist? If you ask me, yes, it most certainly does. With that being said, this was a good game and Alabama is still a good team. Despite being a diehard LSU fan, I'm not entirely sure LSU would have won even if the refs weren't completely biased. And before all the Bama wagon fans who are probably going to go silent after Nick Saban retires and y'all start to suck for a couple of years, please shut up about how this is just how football is played. Even in more brutal sports like boxing, there are rules about hitting below the belt, throwing elbows, taking somebody to the ground. There's a reason you wear boxing gloves. It's to prevent your fist from getting damaged and prevent too much damage from occurring to your opponent. Even in the most brutal contact sports, there are rules and lines that are not meant to be crossed. The fact of the matter is, if this is a horse collar, this should have also been called as a horse collar too. And what you can't tell is that prior to the horse collar, their quarterback used a face mask on Harold Parkins, and you can kind of make it out right here. My question is, why wasn't the face mask called? Because it would have offset the penalty. Now the reason there is a Bama bias is very simple. It's because the SEC headquarters is located where? Birmingham, Alabama. What is the closest SEC school to Birmingham? I mean, come on. They're less than an hour apart. So the majority of the people who are willing to apply and work for the SEC, even as refs, are most likely going to be Bama fans. And because the problem is so obvious and why so many referees in the SEC are biased in the favor of Bama, the solution is equally as obvious. All you have to do is move the SEC headquarters. And if you take a look at the southeastern United States, there's some very obvious candidates that would be a better option for the SEC headquarters that would eliminate the bias. I think one obvious answer would be Nashville, Tennessee. Now I know a lot of y'all are thinking, but isn't Vanderbilt in Nashville? Yes, but they're basically the nerds of the SEC. Vanderbilt, by a wide margin, has the highest standard for academic expectations in order to just get into the school. Which is why they're one of the few teams in the SEC that's never really been a powerhouse of college football. Basically, the only reason Vanderbilt is in the SEC is because they've always been in the SEC, and it's just a tradition at this point. So even if you had referees who were biased in the favor of Vanderbilt, it's not like it's going to make much of a difference for them anyway. Now, keeping in Tennessee, another good option of where to move the SEC headquarters would be Memphis. The nearest SEC school to Memphis is probably Ole Miss in Oxford. Then, of course, you have Arkansas up here in Fayetteville, as well as, of course, Vanderbilt way over here in Nashville. My next option for where we could move the SEC headquarters is either going to be the Huntsville or Chattanooga area. And this because, give or take, depending on which one you choose, they're about the same distance from Tuscaloosa, Knoxville, Nashville, and Athens, Georgia. So that's 4 different SEC fan bases that will likely be applying to be refs in the SEC there. And my final option would be Shreveport, Louisiana, or Bossier City, basically the same place. Because Shreveport is way up here in the northwestern corner of Louisiana, it's a good distance away from Baton Rouge, so there's no real LSU bias. In fact, it's almost just as close to Fayetteville, Arkansas, home of the Razorbacks. Then there's the fact that Texas and Oklahoma are both joining the SEC, and that's really a good crossroads for all 4 of these teams. So in closing, yes, I am 100% convinced that the Bama bias is real, and it's 100% because of the location of the SEC headquarters. And that doesn't take away from the fact that Bama is definitely a good team, but they don't need a bunch of biased refs skewing the odds in their favor. They have talent enough already. But when Bama players know they can get away with this, that makes the game more dangerous than it really needs to be. I get that it's a contact sport, but if safety wasn't a concern at all, they wouldn't wear pads and helmets to begin with. By the same logic that it's a really intense contact sport, there shouldn't be any problem with throwing punches and kicks on the field for that matter. And in all honesty, with or without the biased refs, Bama probably still would have won this game regardless. But it would have been a much better game if the refs called both these teams on their penalties equally. And overly aggressive players should be punished when they go too far. Otherwise, they're going to be emboldened to keep on doing it and hurting other players on the opposing team. So, do you think Bama Bias is real, or do you think it's a conspiracy? Do you think the location has anything to do with it, and do you think relocating would solve the problem? And where do you think it should be located if what I said is not a satisfactory answer for you? Let me know in the comments, or stitch into this video with your opinion.